to Real Talk. I am Professor Pinna. In this episode, I want to discuss something that I get often asked by my students, and that is something concerning convincing people when you don't really have the authority to tell them that they need to do it. And what I'm going to tell everyone is there's no magic bullet to this. Right? You're not just going to walk into somebody's office and walk out with them necessarily believing or buying into whatever you told them. Right? Sometimes this does take time. And that's why I find it kind of crazy sometimes on interview questions when they ask you. Like they have the magic recipe to convince everyone that what they're proposing is the right thing to do. Right? So that to me is crazy within itself. And if you ever had this question asked of you during an interview, and then if you ever followed up and asked them, hey, what do you do? And they give you a nonsense answer or a BS answer, put it in the comments because I'd like to hear about that. Because far too often I've had a lot of people tell me they get asked that, and then anytime they return the favor, they get a nonsense answer. So we don't want that, right? So let's just cut the brass tacks here. There is no silver bullet for this. Convincing people without authority is incredibly difficult. And even if you have authority, sometimes it's equally difficult because some people just decide they're not going to do it. There are ways to handle that. But when you don't have the authority, how do you go about it? And the way to go about it is just being a human that can have a basic conversation. Right? And far too often today, we don't have conversations because we're on our devices, we're sending emails, and we lose that face-to-face. Now, if you're geographically separated, well, schedule something and have the video turned on so they can at least see your face, see your emotions, see your gesturing, so they know you're not full of crap. But the whole piece of convincing them is to initially build a rapport. Build a relationship with that particular person first. Listen to them. Don't tell them. Ask questions. Really understand what is plaguing them, what they're looking for, and how you could help. And then from there, as you're moving through that conversation with them, then you can go in a little bit deeper and show them, well, whatever the idea that you are proposing or whatever action that you want them to take, show them where it's done. Show them how it's been successful. But also show them that it's not necessarily easy either. Set their expectations to understand that this may not be a one-and-done type situation and something that's going to happen overnight. And there may be a need for some trial and tribulation along the way. So that way you're not promising them a diamond and you show up with a rock from your garden. Right? So that at the end of the day, level setting them and setting that expectation is very, very important. Another piece that I found is actually let them pitch the idea once they've bought in. Because if they're the ones that are pitching that particular idea, even though it is your idea, it becomes their idea. And if there are any accolades associated with it, they're going to get the credit for it. Now, if you're the individual that's trying to move it along, you know ultimately where that idea came from. But sometimes getting things done is better than getting the credit for it. Because those that know you did it, well, they know already. And that's what matters there. So don't necessarily always seek that credit for it. But it's a change management technique that is often underrated. It's just having that basic conversation with them and building that level of rapport. And I found that works more often than not. So I'll give you an example from my own personal experiences. I was speaking to a particular group of people within R&D, so research and development. And what came down was that R&D wasn't necessarily being done at a level that ensured design that was robust, meaning that it was strong. That the minute it gets to the market, people are going to say, wow, look at that. So I had a conversation with their VP. And I initially just asked the question, tell me what you're experiencing when designing something new. What are the problems that you're experiencing? What are the good things that are coming out of it? So I let him talk to me and let him tell me everything that is going on within their particular department, knowing in the back of my mind that I had a technique that I was going to be proposing to that particular individual. So after they told me all of these different things, I asked a simple question. Would you mind if I showed you something? I never said it was my idea. I just said, may I show you something? So I pulled out a white paper of an organization that was using a particular design technique. And this was something that was done in Japan for the building of maritime ships. And I said, why don't you just read this? I said, and after you're reading it, why don't we get back together? And he said, yeah, sure, I'll take the time and read it for you. Next time I saw him in the hallway, I said, that was a fascinating read. I would love to talk to you more about this. And I said, sure. So whenever you have time. He says, well, how about now? I said, sure. Right, so I made myself available to him. And then we went through it. And he said, I really like these various aspects here, and I think we can learn from it. He goes, but I'm afraid that it's going to change things so rapidly and so quickly and so forcefully that people aren't going to know what to do and they're going to get frustrated. So this is where I came in and offered assistance. So I said, well, how about this? How about you show me what your current process looks like? And then I'll map that to how this process is performed and identify similarities and differences. And then from there, we can decide what makes the most sense for you and for your team. And I performed this analysis for him. And I presented to him and I said, well, what do you think about this? And he says, I think we should pilot it in a small area and see how it goes. I said, that's terrific. I said, next time you have something come up where we can pilot it, let's do it. And he goes, well, I have an idea already where we can trial this. He goes, I'm going to pitch this to my bosses to see if they agree with it. And I said, that's perfectly fine. So here he goes pitching the idea. They bought into it. We ran the pilot. And at the conclusion of that pilot, what they found was that things were done faster and they were done more robustly, meaning they actually delivered what they said they were going to deliver. And again, that was just me speaking to an individual that had total control over his department. But at the end of the day, he effectively did what I was seeking for him to do, which was to change his process. And he bought into it. But it all started with me having a general conversation with him. So if you're experiencing situations like this, start off with a conversation. Shoot the breeze. Just engage with them. And remember, don't tell them what to do, ever. You're there for them to talk to you. So be an active listener. And then depending on what they tell you, ask questions. And don't necessarily move in immediately and pretend to have the magic sauce that's going to fix everything or make things better. So it is a process, and it's not going to happen over one encounter or two encounters or three encounters. It may take place over many, many encounters. So just understand that it is a process in itself, trying to convince and persuade without authority. So if you have experiences like this, I would love to hear about them. So please drop them into the comments. And until next time, keep it real.